Joining us live now is our friend and regular contributor. He is Assistant Professor of Digital Media at Cedarville University. Welcome back, Professor Sean O'Connor.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on again.
All right, we will get to the slap because it's unavoidable when it comes to the Academy Awards, but I was bummed out at how much that overshadowed some great films and documentaries that won the day that we ought to talk about. So let's kind of go through the list here. Start with Koga. Yeah. I bet a lot of people don't even know what Koga is, never heard of it, but it won a bunch of awards.
Right. Koga won Best Picture and Adapted Screenplay and Supporting Actor. It's the first movie on a streaming service to win Best Picture, which is a big deal. I got to see it back in August when it first came out, and as I was telling you before during the break, I was not expecting it to go all the way to a Best Picture win. Not that it's not a good movie, I think it is, but just the earliness of its release and just maintaining the momentum up to the Academy Awards is a very hard thing to do. But I'm very glad it won.
Is there like a science almost for a film to like know when to release and how to market in order to get the votes it needs?
I mean, sort of. I think there is because, we talked last time I was on the show about when the nominations came out and the movies that had the most nominations. I think the most was The Power of the Dog that Netflix made.
Terrible
and
movie.
In the time between the nominations and the awards, I think enough people who saw the movie saw it. It is slow. It is kind of boring and it's a little depressing. Let's vote for something else to win Best Picture. I think that was the point at which Koga really got people's attention, and I'm glad.
That actually takes me, this is going to sound very elementary, but I'm not into Oscars and all that. That is the prize, Best Picture. What gets you Best Picture? Is it included in terms of the storyline? Is it the overall? What is it that a movie needs?
I think, it might go in trends, right? Because I think the last 10 years or so, most of the movies that have won Best Picture have had this kind of either really uplifting ending despite a lot of, drama and conflicts and things like that, or they're just really technically well done. There have been points in history, I think, almost 20 years ago, we had a series of Best Picture winners that were just like these really moody, depressing movies that I think were reflective of American society at the time. And I think as the world is changing and life in the U.S. is changing, I think our Academy Award winners will reflect that, not necessarily the fact that they're good movies.
So now Koga won Best Picture. I think most notably it's from Apple TV Plus. Mm-hmm. So why does that matter in terms of the future, that a streaming service won Best Picture?
I think that shows that, 10 years ago, I think there was a stigma behind movies that were sent straight to streaming services rather than in theaters, because it was like the straight to DVD movie release that people would say, oh, well, it's lesser than, all these other movies. But in the last 10 years, I think you've seen this trend going that says, no, these movies matter too, and they can be just as good, if not better. And I think that's exciting, especially in the last couple of years where a lot of movies have been forced to go straight to streaming. The stigma has gone away.
But doesn't that have the potential to hurt the theater industry?
Some people would say yes. I'm not totally there yet because I think as Spider-Man and the Batman have shown us, there's room in the theater, like the movie theater industry, for people to go see movies in that space, and streaming isn't going to totally take over, I think, for at least a while. But only certain kinds of movies perhaps will draw people to the theater. And I wonder in the next 10 years if we'll see a shift like what happened 50 years ago with, the movies were kind of dying a little due to television and the rating system and things like that. And then Jaws happened, and then Star Wars happened, and brought people back, into theaters like never before. And who knows, that might happen again with some other movie that we can't even see coming yet.
So in terms of the Best Picture winner, Koga, what's your analysis in terms of its watchability for Christian families?
Well, the one downside, I think, to Koga that keeps me from watching it over and over is there is a little bit of, it's rated PG-13, but there is a little too much sexual content and references and things like that keep me from I feel like families could watch this with like mature teenagers. I think that's what I remember saying back in August when I first saw it. I was like, that's, 12-year-olds may be too young to be like, some things might go over their head, to be honest, but there are certainly some things I'm like, I don't really think this needs to be in the movie. But in terms of the actual premise and the conflict and the relationships between the families, I think that's going to move a lot of people, and I would encourage families to seek it out.
Give us kind of your highlights on things Christians ought to really take note of that won awards.
Sure. Well, my personal favorite movie of last year was Dune, and Dune maybe not be for everybody. I mean, in terms of its fantasy, sci-fi action movie, but I think actually there's a lot of biblical parallels you could make in that movie about, similarly to Lord of the Rings, about power struggles and the coming messiahs and things like that I certainly enjoyed and appreciated, and I hope other people will too. I still think Power of the Dog is at least worth a watch. I mean, it might not be the most enjoyable movie ever. But,
I couldn't get through it, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that won Best Director, which was pretty cool. Jane Campion was the first woman, or the third woman in history to win that award in almost 100 years that the Oscars have been around. Belfast won Best Original Screenplay. I think that's a movie about the Protestant Catholic conflict in Ireland back in the late 60s that I think listeners would appreciate and enjoy. And Encanto won Best Animated Film, which I thought was really cool.
That's a big one at my house. It's replaced Frozen. Like, they don't even talk about Frozen anymore.
I don't think the industry was even ready for Encanto because I think it not only the film surprised people, in my opinion, but the song that was most popular wasn't what anyone anticipated.
Exactly, yeah.
So how do you explain that?
Well, I mean, I think, talking about the streaming versus theatrical thing again, I mean, I remember seeing Encanto on Thanksgiving week in the theater, but it really wasn't until maybe 2 months later, and once it came out on Disney Plus, that like families really got into it who had little kids at home, and like as the catchiness of certain songs caught on, I think that just really, and social media is a big part of that too, just helping something blow up. And I personally don't have any children at home, so I personally don't have that song stuck in my head. But I wonder how many do.
I'm surprised it didn't get Best Soundtrack. Lin-Manuel Miranda was involved big time with this one, right?
It was, yeah. Yeah, the Best Song award went to the song from the James Bond movie, No Time to Die.
Which no one's heard.
Yeah.
That's how it always works, I suppose. Now, I want to ask you about the, right after the slap, everyone missed that Questlove won Best Documentary for for Summer of Soul, which I just watched recently. What's your take on that documentary?
I loved it. I saw it in the theater back in July, and it was very much. I think some critics have said, "Well, is it that much of a documentary because all it's doing is compiling footage of this music festival and just kind of reliving the event?" But I think, that's an important way to tell this story, is just to have the archival footage there, not just because it's, really rare, but just to have the audience that's watching the film kind of relive the experience and see, oh, this was a really joyous musical event with a lot of really big names that celebrated this culture that I think is not only really important, but I think really entertaining. So I would encourage people to seek it out. I think it's on Hulu and might be on DVD as well.
Yeah, I was fascinated by its light but clear juxtaposition with what happened at Woodstock. It's the same summer as Woodstock, but a decidedly different event that nobody wanted to buy or sell or watch. I mean, it was essentially put on. It happened. It was filmed because it was so historic with the people that were there. The huge stars and poets and such, and it was shelved because nobody wanted it, primarily because there's a bunch of black people. I would suppose. But when you compare it to Woodstock, which was debauchery in the mud, I mean, it was like there was a whole host of gospel artists and praise and worship happening in Harlem.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I was really encouraged by that, and I think it's an important reminder to not just remember certain parts of history, but to remember all of it, because I think God works in all of it.
So now, I guess that brings us to the slap. What's your analysis as a professor at Cedarville of, Will Smith walking up on stage and slapping Chris Rock for a joke about his wife's haircut?
Right. Well, I'm glad we're talking about this a week afterwards and not just the night or the morning after, because I think enough things have happened in the aftermath of that kind of help how I think of things. But I think the main problem for me is that, despite we could talk all day about what people should have done differently or could have done differently in the moment. But I think what's most troubling to me is just the fact that in the moment, I mean, Will Smith, when he got up to get his Oscar for King Richard, he apologized to the Academy and he apologized to, the people in the room. He did not apologize to Chris Rock. And it took him 24 hours to put up a response on social media saying explicitly, I apologize to you, Chris. And then Chris Rock did something similar. And it's just kind of a reminder of two things, really, which one is it doesn't matter if you're Will Smith, doesn't matter how likable or popular or rich you are, you can undo a lot of really goodwill with people in the blink of an eye with, one small decision. Yeah. And it's a reminder that, we all have sinned, as we read in Romans, and we all fall short, and we all need that reconciliation, forgiveness, and those things. But also, I think it's a reminder that it's really easy to just, when we know we've done something wrong, to kind of shrug it off. And like what Will Smith said in his acceptance speech, I apologize to the Academy. Love will make you do crazy things. It's not, I don't want to say an excuse of why he went up to slap Chris Rock, but just the idea that, Jesus commands us when we have something at, conflict with our brother, we need to go, as he says in Matthew 5, and make it right with him right then and there. And I think it's really easy to just not do that and skirt around the issue. And I really wish that had happened. And I know that, I wasn't there and I don't have much control over that. But I am really encouraged to hear that when Will Smith, during, a commercial break, he was approached by, among other people, Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry. Mm-hmm. And those two people, I don't know if you've read the articles about their interaction. That's come out in the last few days. They talked with him. They prayed with him. Denzel Washington, in particular, said something that Will Smith said in his acceptance speech that, when you're at your highest, that's when the devil comes for you. Which I thought, you can tie that to Scripture very easily. And then I don't know what their exact, faith affiliations are, and I'm not sure it really matters. I just think we ought to pray for these people, even as big of a celebrity as they may be, or as far away from we are as they may be. They are in need of a savior as well.
Yeah, and we shouldn't give up on Hollywood. Yeah. When you hear about the first reaction is from two followers of Jesus who are praying with Will Smith, Jesus has not abandoned Hollywood.
That's right. What's your take on Sony and Netflix pausing their release of Bad Boy 4? And I'm not sure what Netflix. They have, it's another movie from Will Smith. Where do you think that's going?
Right. I mean, it's hard to tell, a week out, but it doesn't surprise me that they put those projects on hold. They may very well put projects with his family on hold, just maybe at least until, the hype dies down and the slap isn't talked about as much, which is kind of unfortunate that, sometimes it's the way it goes. Companies wait until the hype has died down and we're not, this controversial person we're working with isn't being talked about anymore, and then we'll go ahead and work with them again. Yeah. But again, I think that's a huge reason why I think it's important for there to be people at, for instance, Sony and Netflix, who are not only really excellent storytellers and producers and filmmakers, but love the Lord and can speak solid biblical truth into the lives of different people. And that's something I continue to pray for. It's something I continue to pray for my students for and other students at Christian universities who are studying film. There's absolutely a need there still.
So now for an actor, the Oscars is a professional event. So what should be the professional consequence for Will Smith for his behavior? Physical violence at an event.
Sure. The Academy and some other organizations have been talking, discussing what those options are, because reportedly when it happened, they were just so in shock that, they didn't really know how to respond. But I think expulsion for Will Smith from the Academy was considered, but then on Friday he resigned. So I don't know if his resignation is going to prevent disciplinary action, and that's the reason he did it. I hope that's not the reason. Yeah. But certainly there will be protocol for this kind of thing in the future, I guarantee.
Which is just tragic. Should he lose his Oscar for this?
I don't think he can, nor do I think he should, to be honest. My personal opinion, the Oscar is given for the quality of the performance, not the character of the performer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you are going to take away one person's Oscar for doing a bad thing, I mean, technically, nobody could have Oscars.
Yeah, for real.
True. That's a really good point.
It's a whole mess. Mm-hmm.
And there's actually, I mean, like, worse things have been done by people who have Oscars and still have them, like Harvey Weinstein's one.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's dangerous, in that sense to, like, I don't want to compare sins, that's it's a very dangerous ground. But still, I mean, it's a reminder that, we're all guilty of sin. We all need a Savior. We need to be encouraging each other, lifting each other up, and pointing people to Jesus, and pointing out, finding the speck in our own eye before we find the plank in our brother's eye, or is it the other way around? Excuse me, the plank in our own eye versus the speck in the brother's eye, because we're both in trouble if we leave them there.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps at the end of the day, Will Smith's mother needs to take him from Bel Air and bring him back to Philly.
Hello, yeah, Philly ain't working. Bel Air ain't working.
The answer is
right.
All right, but Professor Sean O'Connor has been who? Me?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
you lost a lot of people with that.
It was Philadelphia, born and raised on a playground. He's been most of his days.
Yeah,
chilling out, Max, relaxing. All. Anyway, not that I know the whole theme song.
No, yeah.
Professor Sean O'Connor is assistant professor of digital media at Cedarville University. You ought to go there. Send your kid there. It's a place where if your child or yourself are aspiring media professionals, it's the place to go. Cedarville.edu for more information. Cedarville.edu. Thanks again, Sean O'Connor, for your analysis today.
Thank you so much.